The head of the FBI in Portland is leaving this assignment to head back to Washington, D.C. Kieran Ramsey will be one of about 30 assistant FBI directors in the nation. Ramsey was named special agent in charge of the Portland field office in 2021. He joined the FBI as a special agent in 1998 and has worked in areas including counterterrorism, hostage recovery, public corruption, and organized crime. His last day in Portland will be January 5th. FBI Special Agent Kieran Ramsey, welcome back to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thanks very much, Ken, for having me.
What can you tell me about the assignment that you're going to?
Yeah, so I'll be reporting back to FBI headquarters as an assistant director working on a myriad of national security issues is probably the simplest explanation I could give you.
Will there be any international work involved?
Probably. When we talk about national security issues, it's really global security issues because, again, constantly the United States is under threat from foreign adversaries like, hostile nation states, foreign terrorist groups, hacking groups that are halfway around the world, but every day try and attack good people here, especially in Oregon.
Since the war between Israel and Hamas started, we've seen an increase in both anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim activity here. What have we seen in Oregon, and how does the FBI deal with that?
Yeah, it's a big concern for us because we hear so much from the community. We hear from our Jewish friends and neighbors about the concerns they have of foreign terrorist organizations specifically targeting them, or people being inspired by calls from Hamas and Hezbollah and Al-Qaeda. But then on the other side, we also have our good friends from the Arab and Muslim communities that are scared for people to retaliate against them for something they have nothing to do with and something they've totally disavowed. So when we see these threats, and we just saw a rash of online threats recently, we take them very seriously. Our first and foremost concern is making sure that there is no capability behind that threat, meaning it's a non-credible threat. But even though it may be non-credible, we still have to take steps to identify who is out there trying to intimidate, trying to harass, trying to create fear in our community, and if we can, hold them accountable.
Have we had significant threats along those lines here in Oregon?
Unfortunately, we just saw last week a rash of threats that came through. You saw that over a dozen school districts, in fact, received online threats. It caused a number of elementary schools and middle schools to be evacuated. At the same time those were being received, there were houses of faith here in the Portland metro area that received very similar threats that we believe are related.
You worked in hostage negotiations before. You've had international posts in the Middle East in the past. A couple of weeks ago, we saw that Israeli Defense Forces accidentally killed 3 hostages during their military operation in Gaza. Is the FBI involved in trying to get these hostages home?
So we have a number of Americans that are still being held captive. In fact, though, they are dual Israel-American nationals. So the FBI's efforts is in close coordination and cooperation with the government of Israel, with the authorities of Israel, to really bring to bear whatever solution we can to get, in fact, every hostage out safely. It is a very, very difficult situation, though, when we talk about an ongoing ground war and people being hidden in tunnels and caves, hundreds of feet below ground, and constantly being moved and constantly being under threat of some horrible fate.
Let's take a look at some numbers provided by the FBI about your tenure as a Portland Special Agent in charge since January of 2021. 542 arrests, 312 convictions, 300 and I believe that's 66 weapons recovered, and 115 children located. There are other numbers that were provided to us as well. Take us behind the scene of some of those numbers and what made up most of those convictions and arrests.
Well, let's start with that 115 children located. It's actually 115 children rescued from sex trafficking, rescued from abuse, rescued from being exploited through the production of child sexual abuse material. I mean, these are no kidding serious recoveries when we talk about rescuing children. It is something that we have such a great dedicated team that works across every law enforcement agency in the state, that if we have information that we can go out and find a child that is under threat of sexual abuse or sex trafficking or human trafficking, we've got to put down everything we're doing and go rescue that child.
When we had you on a couple of months ago, we talked about the deployment of federal agents, officers in Portland during the protests of 2020. To your knowledge, when were they first deployed and were they redeployed during the post-January 6th demonstration?
So I couldn't give you any specifics in terms of the deployment because it was a lot of agencies that were deploying for very specific missions. You know, the protection of the federal courthouse, the protection of the federal building. And I'll put it in context like this. During the summer of 2020, we saw almost nightly attacks with Molotov cocktails on federal facilities, the federal courthouse. Today, on any given day, if a Molotov cocktail is thrown at a federal courthouse, that is everybody put down what you're doing, we're going to investigate this. That's a big deal. But unfortunately, all the federal agencies combined couldn't even keep up with that effort because it was happening in such a huge number of incidents on a regular basis. Thankfully, we're not seeing that anymore. My concern, though, as we enter this 2024 election cycle, we do have concerns of political violence on the escalation side of things. And unfortunately, you know, there's enough rhetoric out there to cause us concern. So it causes us as federal law enforcement to make sure that we are doing everything we can in partnership with state and local law enforcement, but also the municipalities, the election offices, all of these other public sector entities to make sure that it is one team that understands what the threats are, what we can provide, and what can we do about it lawfully to make sure that we don't see a repeat of the violence like we saw in the summer of 2020.
Yeah, looking at 2020, do you know if any members of the military were here as part of that federal presence?
I'm not aware of any military deployment. That would be unusual. But again, I think the bigger concern for 2020 was this constant barrage of violence that really, unfortunately, hijacked the lawful expression of First Amendment protected activities on the part of thousands of people that were lawfully demonstrating, lawfully protesting, lawfully decrying the murder of George Floyd. But unfortunately, a lot of that got hijacked by a group of 100 to 250 people that just wanted to burn, to loot, to assault, to really make a mess of the city with no care about what was really the concern there. And that was, at the time, the murder of George Floyd.
We've only got about a minute left, but I want to go back to something you talked about as we head into this contentious political season. What is the FBI's role in dealing with any problems that might arise because of violence or threats during that election season?
So we have a couple of different roles. First off, I'll make sure I phrase it, public order policing, not the FBI's role. That is our state and local partners, generally speaking. But we have a role on the front end to make sure that we are sharing any intelligence that we might have of people that are out there plotting to commit some kind of violent act or to make threats of violence. And then if we see that, we need to make sure that we're providing whatever investigative or other resources we can to either prevent those acts of violence or then investigate them after they've occurred to make sure that we're holding anybody accountable.
FBI Special Agent Kieran Ramsey, thank you for joining Eye on Northwest Politics, and good luck with your future assignment in Washington, D.C.
Thanks so much, Ken. It's really been a privilege.
Next, he's been on Portland City